Hello, this is the tutorial for exercise 2 in Illustrator. So I'm going to start by reviewing the project. So exercise 2 is called abstract design in photo context. So the concept is that we're going to create an abstract vector design using Illustrator and place it into a realistic photographic context. And we're going to do that by using Photoshop. So where would you display this design? Place your design in the context of its ideal space or place, gallery, museum, cultural center, on a product, etc. So you'll use one of your own photos and two found photos from the internet. An iPhone or any kind of smartphone is capable of taking a high-res photo that will meet this, this standard in Photoshop. However, you have to make sure that the lighting is good. So taking it outdoors in natural light is almost guaranteed to have a high quality photo. If you have indoor, really good natural light indoors, that could work. Or if you have something like an object indoors that you want to take a picture of, take it outside during a bright, not necessarily sunny, but just like a bright day. It could be cloudy or sunny. And you'll find two photos on the internet like we did last time, so you'll search for context. So original art, your illustrated design created in Illustrator is going to be all your own. So you're going to start with a large website document and in either vertical or horizontal format, and then consider the following principles and design elements to create a strong composition. What we went over last time, the principles of art and design. So step 2, that's going to be a Illustrator and Photoshop tutorial coming next week. So art in a situation. So your design in Illustrator composited realistically in Photoshop into 3 different photo contexts. It should feel believable. Each context should feel transformed by the addition of the applied design. When selecting a photograph, you should select one that is relatively large enough for the design to be properly visible. Photos should be a minimum of 1920 by 1080 pixels, so that's HD. You can either begin by designing for a specific photo context, or you can first concentrate on the design and then select an appropriate context for it. We're going to go over in Photoshop transform tools such as distort, perspective, scale, and rotate, as well as transfer modes that are part of each layer, like multiply, screen, add, and darken, which you used in the last project. In Illustrator, we're going to talk about the pen tool, custom shapes, use of gradient and mesh tools, and warp tools and grouping objects. So what to hand in? Once you're finished, you'll be handing in a folder with your name that contains 4 files. So in eCampus, yeah, you can hand in I think a zip file of the folder or just the 4 files on their own. So one will be an Illustrator file containing the original design, and the other 3 will be JPEG files that contain your design in a photographic context. If you have any trouble with Illustrator file, and we'll go over how to export later, then you can save it as an EPS file and upload that. Okay, and this is due October 19th. So in your course materials content, where you can find exercise 2. So course materials content, click on exercise 2 where we are. I have examples, 2 student examples from last year. So we'll start with Maria. So I actually have the original drawing. So her original drawing is okay, so I have to actually upload it. I didn't have it uploaded here. So Artboard 1, this is Maria's original drawing in Illustrator. So she used the pen tool, different shapes. She brought in an image and traced it with the pen tool to create these like inner veins and brains, and then used a circle ellipse tool and added gradient inside to create this pattern. So hers wasn't as much as a pattern as like a logo, and that's okay. You can do that in Illustrator, but there are elements of movement, right? These lines and repetition, as well as like some symmetry and the centeredness of the man inside. Okay. So next, this is her photo. I would recommend getting weights that are a little bit nicer or newer in quality. But it's a really good picture because it's a close-up that she took with her phone. And so the background is blurred out and it has this macro image feeling. And she placed her logo on the edge here in Photoshop. Then she placed it on the wall. A key component of this part of the project is that, excuse me, you need to have your image be a really large portion of the screen. So for example, here, this takes up about, I'd say, 2/3 of the screen. And in this image, it takes up at least half. And that would be the minimum, at least half. So if you were to use this image, she couldn't have placed, I think she tried to place the logo on the box. And I said that wasn't enough. You needed it to be bigger and more visible. Otherwise, it doesn't feel like pictures about the drawing at all. And then on a shoe. So obviously she found this online as well as the other one, and the first one was her original. Okay, this student that I'm showing you next, she drew this herself on with a drawing tool pen, like her own personal tablet. So you can do this if you have an iPad and a pen, or you can do this if you have a Wacom tablet, or if you draw it on a pen and paper, take a photo of it and bring it in, you can actually like transform that. So if you're interested in that, you can talk to me about it. So after she brought it in, her illustration into Illustrator, she started to play around with the lines and added color. After that, she placed it in context. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So she found this picture and placed it on the wall several times. And then she found this picture, placed it on the ground, and played with the perspective of the image. And then one more, I believe this was her photo. So she placed it here in the middle of the board and flipped it. So she played a lot with repetition. So you can do that even with your own drawing. You could actually make this, tiny and repeat it 30 times on the board to make a pattern out of like one illustration you've drawn in Photoshop. Okay, so going into Illustrator. So once I open Illustrator, it's going to give me this new document option, or I'm going to click on Create New. In this version, I'm going to go to Web. I'm going to choose Web Large. That's a 1920 by 1080, and that's all I have to do. I'm going to start with landscape, but I could choose portrait. And then I'm going to make 2 artboards. We talked about artboards briefly in the past, but when you create an artboard, you can actually, excuse me, you can play with like 2 versions of your design at the same time, or you can start one, and then once you're in a good place with it, you can move on to the next. Okay, great. Papo, leave it. Okay, so once you're in Illustrator, you'll notice it looks kind of similar to Photoshop. You have the toolbars on the left, you have your menu bars on the top, and you have your tool options, I guess I could say, on the side. So you have your layers panel, color guide panel, swatches panel, and then some other options here. What we have here is a transparency tool, an alignment tool, a gradient tool, etc. So the first thing is just basic shapes. So in your toolbar here, there is a rectangle button, a rectangle tool. And if you click and hold on that, and I'm holding my mouse now, I haven't released it yet, you can choose between rectangle, rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, and star. So you can start to create really simple shapes. I'm going to zoom in, Command plus or Control plus, and I can just make a series of different kinds of rectangles or squares. If I want to make a perfect square, I'm going to click, drag, and hold Shift, and then release my mouse before I release Shift. Okay. I can also create ellipses, right? So ellipses are non-perfect circles, or you can hold Shift to get a perfect circle, release the mouse, and then release shift. So I have a few of those. Okay, so maybe I'm playing around with this a little bit, and I'm going to add star tool. So with the star tool, it starts you off with, let's see, 5 points. You can add or take away points by clicking on the up arrow or the down arrow on your keyboard. So up adds points and down takes away points. Okay. I'm also going to add a few lines. So I'm just messing around here, right? This is just me making basic shapes. So I'm not planning anything. If you are doing this project, you might want to go to some inspiration boards. So you could look at graphic design patterns, Behance. Behance is a good place for different examples of design work. So now I'm on Behance itself, and you can see that like some patterns are illustrations, some patterns are simple shapes, but they have like an extra layer to them with thickness and color. So what else is here? You could make leaf patterns. That would be using the pen tool, which we'll talk about next week. You can think about color. You could make, you know, spaces like little rooms, and so on. Patterns like this one, etc. So the pattern is really all up to you. So this can relate back to your blog, right? Like this could be that you're using colors of the team that you're working on, like the Giants, or you could, you know, think about continuing some of the colors used in Photoshop, like bright pinks and neutrals. Or you could do like blues and productivity and think about like what images represent that. This is a neat pattern as well, you know, and we're saying pattern kind of loosely, right? We're just talking about graphical shapes organized together on a page. So Behance is a good place. Pinterest is also a great place if you look at patterns. Okay, so we've got a lot going on here. I might like where I'm at, but I want to kind of start to add colors and hone in on my project a little bit. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to click and drag to select everything. Then I'm going to copy and paste, Control C, Control V, or Command C, Command V in Mac. And then I'm going to place it on my other drawing. So this is when the artboards come in handy. And you can add more artboards by clicking on this artboard tool on the left and either clicking and dragging to make a new one, right? But that might not be the exact measurements. So I would recommend copying this by holding Alt or Option on a Mac and then clicking and dragging. And then you have another duplicate. Okay. I'm going to work on this one. So I don't like that shape, that shape. I don't like the stars at all. I'm going to take those away. I think they're too distracting. Kind of like these. I like this little bit. I'm going to bring that in. That's too much. Too much. Okay, I'm killing this. Okay, then I can start to look at colors. So I have all these swatches over here. It gives me a small selection, but I could actually go into this show all swatches or create a new swatch, and I could make whatever color I want. Okay, press OK, added it to my library, and then it pops up my library. Great, I'm going to go back to swatches. There's this neat tool down here called Color Guide. And so once I've created one color, it can actually show me the harmony rules, right? So that's what it says here. And this is part of like Adobe Color, and they've integrated it. So it used to be a website, they've integrated it into Illustrator. You can still go to Adobe Color and play with those tools. This tells you complementary, right? So this is the exact opposite. So if I was to put say, a rectangle background. Make a container for my pattern and make it red. Right click, arrange, send to back. You can see that that's like that color pops against the red because it's complementary. I don't like what's going on here with this line around my box. That's called a stroke. So I'm going to go to the top and take out the stroke by clicking on that none box. You can also edit the stroke by making it larger, right? And you can change the color. So maybe I'll change it to that color that I chose. Okay. In the color guide, there's more than just complementary, right? They give you a whole set of options. So I'm going to do left complement, so I have sort of more options here. And I'm going to take away the stroke. I'm not a big fan of strokes on my patterns. Go here. But I think in this one, I might try like what it looks like to have that. Okay. And, and so on. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so that we can go a little bit faster. So these are just basic shapes, right? Something about basic shapes before we get into like organic shapes and the pen tool next week. I want to show you some things that can happen here. So you might have two shapes like this, right? So when they're put over each other, they're just showing like full opacity. So there's this tool called transparency tool. And what full opacity does is show like the full color. And you can take down the opacity, that's one option. Or you can play with these transparency tools and do something called multiply. I'm gonna move this off the red for a moment. So what multiply does is actually mixes these colors. It's very smart that way. So I can duplicate this and let's do, classic blue and red, or maybe not that red. And we should get a purple. I don't think I'm using the right. Let's see. Okay, purple-ish color. And if you put a different color over that, so I'm going to bring this to the front, right? Right click, arrange, bring to front, and multiply. And you'll see that like those are totally different colors. Let's do one more. See the effect on here. Let's do orange. Okay, and you can choose things like, color dodge, soft light, hard light, and it's going to mix it in different ways. And that might be more exciting colors. Okay. So you could really think about like creating some kind of color pattern. So now that I've moved a little bit away from what I was making there, I'm going to play with this color pattern. So say I really like this, I could duplicate it, right? So click and drag, select all, duplicate it. I'm going to go ahead and move my mouse to the right corner and turn it so that it's upside down. Oops. And then I'm going to drag them all back to here. And I just got the idea to line those up like that. I want these to line up. Okay. So maybe I've created this, this pattern. I could see what it looks like really large. So I hold shift while I scale it. Okay. Or I could do it maybe, I'm going to do it in medium. I'm going to turn it again. And just start to really like play around with these patterns and see what happens. And then I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to group this. So I'm going to go to Object, Group. I'm going to do the same thing to the other one, object, group. And then I'm going to click them both. And you see at the top, I have these alignment tools that pop up. So I'm going to click on some of these and see, okay, that makes it even. That brings them together. I don't want that. But I did just notice that when it brought it together, it multiplied all the colors. So now I'm curious to see what happens if I make another one, Control C, Control V, flip it on its side. Hold Shift to make a perfect right turn and see how those colors interact with each other. Okay, and I might delete it there. Oops. So I have to ungroup this before I delete part of it. So ungroup. I just want to delete this end here. Okay. And so now I've got a little pattern going on. So at this point, I could go back to my artboard tool, delete this artboard because I think it's getting in the way. Click on V. So V or your select tool. Select all of these, delete them, go back to artboard tool. And at this point, I'm going to duplicate this. And you say, okay, I like where that has gone, but now I want to look at it a little bit closer. I'm going to show you the ellipse tool. So I'm going to send this to the back. Okay, I know it's creating all those layers. I want to choose a different color, see if something a little bit nicer happens. Maybe I can go even out of my color guide and see kind of like that. Don't like how it's mixing. Okay, so at this point, there's another tool I want to show you called Gradient Tool. I'll save it after. So this is the gradient tool here. So if I click on this, you'll see that there's a few options here. So it's showing you this black and white gradient. I can choose type, which is linear, radial, or freeform. Freeform adds these little points. So you can have 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, and you can go on and on. If I do this, I'm going to click on that point, and I want to change the color. I want to go back to that green I had. So I'm going to choose green. I'm going to click on the next point. Maybe here I'll choose like a pink. And then the next one I'll choose darker pink. No, lighter green. No. No. Maybe more of this like lime green. Yeah, so you could play around with that kind of gradient. And now as I move it around, there's a lot of different effects that are happening. So you might choose to do something like that with gradient. Okay, so this is happening because it's behind the layer. This is in front. So again, if I go range, send to back, it'll behave the same way as the other one with the colors. Or I could choose to go to transparency, right, this tool, and see if there's other options that I like. Okay. Again, I don't want a stroke on this. I'm going to take out the stroke. And I'm going to leave it there for now as an incomplete image. Then I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to save it in a projects folder. I have the Illustrator Exercise 2 projects folder. So I'm going to call this Exercise 2 AS for Amanda Stoyanov, and then I'm going to hit enter to save it. It's going to give this pop-up Illustrator options. So here, Illustrator's to see, that's correct. All of this stuff, I can just press OK. And then, I have this option. So now as I make changes, you'll see this little star popped up here, which means it's not saved. So I can hit Control S to save it, and that little star up here went away. So that's all for now. Well, actually, the last thing I want to show you is if you find a pattern that you're really interested in, and it doesn't have to be like a pre-created pattern. It could be an illustration. Like it could be, let's see. It could be this illustration, which you're obviously not going to be drawing all the details, right? This is a watercolor. So you can save as image. So I'm going to save it to that same folder I was in. So I need to go into my documents, into that specific folder. It's saving as HTML. I don't want that. I want the image. So what I'm going to do is take a screenshot. So this is Command Shift 3 or Command Shift 4 on a Mac, or like a print screen button on your Windows. So I'm going to save as, and I really should have a shortcut for this by now, but that's okay. So now I'll go in. And I'll save this PNG. And then I could, at this point, make a new artboard. So I can draw a new one now that I know I don't want to repeat my pattern. I know it's not the perfect size, but I can go in here and go to the width, which I know needs to be 1920 by 1080. And then I can move it over and I have the perfect size that I'm working with again. Then I'm going to go to my files and I'm going to choose the image that I saved. And then you can place that, right? Its place, so I can show my layers. And I know that this is the layer because I can see the little drawing here and I'm checking with the eye. I can lock that layer and then zoom in, and then I can start to actually work with these patterns. So this one is going to need the pen tool, but let's just say for the sake of doing this that you wanted to just start with like an ellipse. You could start to like create an ellipse here over the mushroom. With this shape, I might take down the transparency right in here a little bit so I can see what's going on. Okay, it's pretty close. I'm obviously going to need some more layers and to this ellipse. It's not a perfect ellipse. And then I'm going to move it over and I'm going to use this tool called the eyedropper tool on the left. So if I click on the eyedropper tool, I can actually click into an image and get the color. Okay, so I clicked on a dark part of this mushroom. In this case, I would probably want to use a gradient. Even though mine's not going to be realistic, it's going to be more about the general idea of it. But I'm going to use the free form, and I'm going to go to this area, and I'm going to use the eyedropper tool, select a light color, okay? And then I'm going to place that lighter color here. I know I want like a middle dark. I'm going to put another light color there and a light color there. So it goes from lighter to darker to lighter. So this color, I'm going to change from this white to brown by clicking on the eyedropper within the gradient tool. Okay. And then at the bottom, go a little lighter. The top, mimic those areas. And I actually think that, this could have more points. So I'm going to go into the open space here and then click again, and I'm going to make this one a little bit lighter. And I can also expand the reach of these, right? So I can like bring them in or out a little bit. And I'm going to do that here. And then also here, move this one up. So now you're starting to get like a version of the mushroom. And then using the pen tool, we'll go in and get the more organic shape. And that will be for next week. So for now, I'm going to file save or Control or Command S and stop there.